Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us. I'm Congresswoman Yvette D. Clarke, Chair of the Congressional Black Caucus for the 119th session of Congress and proud representative of New York's 9th Congressional District, located in Brooklyn, New York. So let's tell the truth, plainly and without apology. American democracy has never been fully formed and has never been equally accessible. Every inch of progress in this country has been fought for, won through struggle, through resistance, and through the courage of people this nation tried to leave behind. We did not become a truly multiracial democracy until the Voting Rights Act of 1965 enforced the 15th Amendment, because Black Americans demanded the right to be seen, heard, and counted. That progress was paid for in blood, in sacrifice, and in unbreakable resolve. And now, 60 years later, we are watching that progress be ripped away. With its decision in Louisiana v. Callais, the Supreme Court has opened the door to a coordinated attack on Black voters across this country. This is an outright power grab. It's about silencing Black voices, dismantling majority Black districts, and rigging the map so that politicians can choose their voters instead of the other way around. We have seen this before. We know exactly what this leads to, and we will not go back. For years, we've sounded the alarm on the Voting Rights Act as the Voting Rights Act was chipped away piece by piece. Today, the consequences are here, and they are dangerous. Let me say this clearly. The legitimacy of this court is in crisis. This is not the court of Thurgood Marshall. This is not the court that delivered Brown v. Board of Education. This is not the court that expanded freedom and moved this nation closer to its ideals. This is a court that is turning back its back on that legacy and on the people it is supposed to serve. But we're not powerless, and we're not backing down. The Congressional Black Caucus is prepared to take any measure necessary to protect Black voters in this country. We are demanding an immediate vote on the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act, and we will not accept delay, obstruction, or excuses. We will, and we will go further. We will fight for Supreme Court reform. We will pursue term limits for justices, and we will do what it takes to restore integrity, accountability, and trust, because no institution is above the people it serves. So let me be clear. This fight is not just about Black America. It is about the future of American democracy itself. So to anyone who thinks that we will be discouraged, to anyone who believes that we will be silenced, to anyone who hopes we will sit this moment out, you are mistaken. We will organize, we will mobilize, and we will fight. When November comes, as we show up in numbers too big to ignore and too powerful to suppress, we're not going back. We will not be moved, and we will not stop until this democracy works for all of us.
You're not going back.
Having said that, it is my honor to now bring to the podium Representative Troy Carter of Louisiana.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'm Congressman Troy Carter of Louisiana, the first vice chair of the Congressional Black Caucus. Thank you for being here. Obviously, this ruling today has a devastating blow to our democracy. Plain and simple. Our democracy, a democracy that is made up of all of us. We know that Louisiana may be the epicenter, hence the name, Louisiana v. Callais. But what this really means is far deeper than Louisiana. The impacts go throughout every congressional district, every school board district, every legislative district, every city council district. Here's the really crazy thing about this. In Louisiana v. Callais and this ruling, you are allowed under this ruling to have partisan gerrymandering. So you can create an advantage, but there's no protection against those who would create a disadvantage. Make that make sense. You can create partisan gerrymandering and you can stack the deck to thus get rid of what we enjoy as a democratic ability to have Democrats, Republicans, white, black, all recognized, to go with just a single party rule. But you don't have the ability to defend against discrimination. The window is very narrow per this ruling. You know the saying, come for us today, come for you tomorrow? This is bigger than Louisiana. This is bigger than the Congressional Black Caucus. This is about our democracy.
That's right.
And I implore everyone who's out there to recognize that if you care about justice, freedom, and fair elections, you should be as upset as we are. You should be willing to band with us to defend our Constitution, to defend our rule of law, to make sure that no one person, whoever that person may be, has the right to singularly tip the scales.
That's right.
That's what we see happening with this ruling. A tipping of the scales because our president wasn't shy when he said, go out and get me just 5 more votes. And that 5 votes has now trickled into what we see today. A battle that should never happen. A battle that has taken us to a place that America shouldn't go. A battle that attempts to take us back pre-1965. We need a true voting rights bill now. John Robert Voting Rights Act is the measure that will get us back onto a level playing field where all Americans are treated equally. Thank you for being here.
We now bring to the podium Congresswoman Sewell of Alabama.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm Congresswoman Sewell. I represent Alabama's 7th Congressional District. We fondly call ourselves Alabama's Civil Rights District, which includes the historic cities of Birmingham, Tuscaloosa, and my hometown of Selma, Alabama. Today, the far-right Supreme Court has dealt a devastating blow to our democracy and to the Voting Rights Act of 1965. It will pave the way for the greatest reduction in representation for Black and minority voters since the years following Reconstruction. What the court did today makes it easier for bad state actors to silence the voices of Black voters and harder to challenge the discrimination in court. The court just gave states permission to use partisan gerrymandering as a wholesale excuse to deny Black and minority voters a voice in our democracy. I'm going to repeat that. The court just gave license to states to use partisan gerrymandering as an excuse to discriminate against the voices of the minority in government. We should not mince words. This is the height of hypocrisy from the court. They just prioritize partisan politics over the sacred principle of fair representation, and the decision will have far-reaching consequences. It will not only suppress minority votes in the halls of Congress, but it will erode minority representation in state houses, city councils, and even school boards across this nation. With this decision, the extremists on the Supreme Court have completed their decades-long crusade to gut the Voting Rights Act of 1965. They willingly dismiss generations of legal precedent, of congressional intent, and the will of the American people. In doing so, they have given a green light to Donald Trump's partisan voter suppression scheme. Instead of responding to the will of the people and changing course, Trump and Republicans are trying to erode our democracy and suppress the vote to escape accountability at the ballot box. They're looking to steal the election. And we in the Congressional Black Caucus say no.
No.
We say hell no.
Hell no.
Not without a fight. I am a daughter of Selma, Alabama, and I grew up in the shadow of the civil rights movement. The foot soldiers who marched across that bridge were my neighbors, my church members, my parishioners, and my babysitters. I am here to tell you that the progress secured by those foot soldiers is being erased before our very eyes. And we say no.
No.
We say hell no.
Hell no.
Not on our watch. We cannot stand by while extremists try to silence the voices of Black and minority voters. We have an urgent obligation to act. Now more than ever, we need communities across this nation to mobilize in state legislatures, in the courts, and at the ballot box. We need to vote like we've never voted before. Here in Congress, we are fighting back. This week, we launched a series of nationwide convenings led by the Southern Poverty Law Center and the House administration to hear from voters across this nation about the attacks on voting rights and the modern-day barriers to the ballot box. Their testimony will help us and inform us in our legislative duties to revise and pass the John Robert Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act with the goal of fully restoring the protections of the Voting Rights Act. The right to vote is the bloodline of our democracy. And in the spirit of John Lewis, we will continue to get into some good trouble.
That's right.
Until this democracy lives up to its creed of equality and justice for all.
Thank you. Thank
With that, we bring our leader, the leader of the Democratic. Oh, sorry.
Right, Cleo.
Sorry. With that, we bring the leader, Cleophas Fields from Louisiana, who directly is impacted by this Callais case.
Cleo.
Thank you. Thank you. Look, after all those remarks, I would just simply say I rest my case. Listen, I'm from a state where in order to register to vote years ago, you had to state the preamble to the Constitution. I'm from a state that basically said you had to own property in order to register to vote. This is not new for me. I've been down this road before. You know, 33 years ago, the same court and the same plaintiffs, for the most part, filed a lawsuit against the, at that time, the 4th Congressional District. And they basically said that it was a racial gerrymander. And the courts ruled that they were right. The legislature went back and eliminated the district. Here we go again. I've never served a day in Congress without a lawsuit in the Supreme Court. Louisiana's minority population is over 33% Black. People have a right to participate in their democracy. If you tell me that I gotta jump a certain height, I could probably do that. Tell me I gotta run a certain district, distance, I could probably do that too. But if you tell me I have to be white to serve in Congress from Louisiana, I can't do nothing about that. I need some help from my government.
That's right.
And that's why we need to pass, as soon as possible, the John Lewis Voting Rights Act. This is about democracy for the country, but precisely for southern states in our country. They need the help of the Voting Rights Act. So I urge the members of this body to pass the John Lewis Voting Rights Act as soon as possible and without fail. And at this time, I'd like to yield to our leader, Leader Jeffries.
Thank you, Cleo. I thank Chairwoman Yvette Clarke and all of the distinguished members of the Congressional Black Caucus. Today's decision by this illegitimate Supreme Court majority strikes a blow against the Voting Rights Act and is designed to undermine the ability of communities of color all across this country to elect their candidate of choice. But we're not here to step back. We're here to fight back.
Yes.
Now, when this decision came out earlier today, it's an unacceptable decision, but not an unexpected decision. Because this isn't even really the Roberts court. It's the Trump court.
Yes.
And what we would expect from the Trump court is an effort to continue their scheme to suppress the vote and rig the midterm elections and beyond. Because these extremists have failed America in every possible way. They failed on the economy, they failed on health care, they're failing as it relates to this reckless and costly war of choice. The extremists have completely and totally failed America.
That's right.
So they've concluded, aided and abetted by the Trump court, that they have to cheat to win.
Yes.
But the reality of our experience, our journey, now more than 400 years, is that we view a setback, and this is one, but we view setbacks as nothing more than a setup for a comeback.
That's right.
And America has the great opportunity to keep the comeback going by exercising your right to vote in November and making it clear that it's not Donald Trump or his Supreme Court majority that should be the ones to decide who gets to represent you in Congress. It's the American people.
That's right.
Now, they've tried to do everything they can, particularly in the aftermath of the 2008 election. They've tried to do everything that they can to eliminate and erase our journey, our struggle, our march in this country toward a more perfect union. And now we're at a point where affirmative action is gone, diversity is gone, equity gone, inclusion gone, racial tolerance gone, the Voting Rights Act largely gone. But guess what, extremists? We're still here.
That's right.
And we're not going anywhere. And we believe in this country.
That's right.
Not a perfect country, but we recognize that what we've been given is a march toward a more perfect union. And at this moment in time, we're urging everyone to summon the courage, the character, and the conviction of those heroes like John Lewis and Rosa Parks and so many others upon whose shoulders we stand.
Yes.
They had to fight through moments of turbulence, trials and tribulations. But every single time, they fought through those moments and were able to usher in a new era of progress. And that's what this moment represents right now. It's turbulent. It's chaotic. It's extreme. But all of us are going to summon that courage, that character, that conviction, and show up and stand up and speak up for what we know is right, to get this situation turned around. We will not let their scheme to rig the midterm election and beyond be successful. And when we take back the majority in the aftermath of the November 2026 elections, one of our first acts is going to be to make sure we pass the John Robert Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act so we can end the era of voter suppression in America once and for all.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Mr. Leader. Let me thank all of my colleagues standing here shoulder to shoulder. More would have been here had we not just heard this decision. But I want to open up now for any questions from the press. Yes, could you state your name and your outlet?
Cheyenne Daniels of Politico. 2 questions, if that's okay. I'm hearing lots about the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act, potentially revisions to it. What would revisions look like? And frankly, what is the support from the Republican side, or does this have to wait until Democrats win back either chamber? And if so, with this ruling today and with the redistricting that we are already hearing GOP members saying they want to get the ball rolling on, what's the likelihood Democrats can actually win either chamber in November now?
Well, listen, we cannot give up. We're not going to give up. When we talk about revising it, we talk about revising it to meet the standards that were set by Callais, by Shelby, dealing with some of the issues that align with enforcement, dealing with the fact that we want to bring back pre-clearance, and in order to do that, we need a modern day formula for determining which states are bad actors. In fact, the bill that we filed this year goes back to 1998, and it still covers about 7 or 8 states that have had, egregious behavior when it comes to voting discrimination. I guess what I'm saying is that voting discrimination is egregious, and the Voting Rights Act, while not totally eliminated by the Supreme Court case today, it was definitely gutted. But here's what I know for a fact. There's no way that the Supreme Court or that this Congress cannot let egregious state actors violate voter discrimination without having a remedy. And those remedies come from the Voting Rights Act. I think more than ever, it's now time for Congress to act. I mean, that's what the Supreme Court said in the Shelby decision, waiting on Congress to come with a modern-day formula, not a formula that discriminates against discriminations that happened in the 1960s or 70s, but modern-day discrimination. And we've seen that abound, whether that's requiring people to pay their bail, the cost of court costs in order to get their right to vote unsuspended. That's a modern-day poll tax is what it is. Or the SAVE Act that the Republicans are trying to ram down our throat. You know and I know that a passport costs $110, and I have a lot of members of my constituency that can't afford that. So there are definitely modern-day suppression tactics that the Republicans and the extremists have made alive and well, and we seek to address those in the Voting Rights Act, the John Roberts Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act. And so we know that we can't just submit the same thing. We must revise it in order to reflect the court cases that have tried to gut it.
Rita Jeffries.
On the midterm aspect of that question, let me be very clear about one thing. We are not going to let the extremists successfully rig the midterm election. We will not allow them to artificially hold power as a result of a racial gerrymander, a partisan gerrymander, or DeSantis dummymander. Doesn't matter what it is. We're not going to let them prevail. And we're not just talking about that. We faced this same very question about a year ago when Donald Trump and Republicans launched this scheme to gerrymander congressional maps all across the country and snatch away, according to what people objectively said, it was going to be 10, 12, or 15 seats with folks claiming that Democrats could do nothing about it. But we stand here today having fought back all over the place, in Texas, in California, in Utah, in Ohio, in New Hampshire, in Nebraska, in Missouri, in Indiana, and most recently in Virginia. And Democrats haven't lost the gerrymandering battle. We're winning it. And everybody understands that. Regardless of what they do in Florida, well, we'll continue to push back. So don't let any MAGA extremists fool you about what may ultimately result from this decision, particularly as it relates to the next few months. Because we're going to fight back in the Deep South and all over the country.
That's right.
And when it's all said and done, we're going to win.
That's right. That's right. Yes.
Allie Mutnick with Punchbowl. Would you support a push from blue states, New York, California, New Jersey, to unravel their existing VRA districts in order to erase Republican seats in those states, even if it could mean less black representation?
I'm sorry. Repeat that.
Would you support a push?
No, I heard parts of it.
Yeah, so like New York, New Jersey, California, if they unravel their VRA seats in order to pick up Republican seats in those states, like, is that a response that you would endorse?
To pick up Republican seats?
No, Democratic seats. Look, I can't speak for all of the Black Caucus, but we're already in a race to the bottom that we're winning, by the way, on gerrymandering. And what this decision says is that it values partisan politics over discrimination. It's really, 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 I mean, it takes us back. And so to the extent that it's inviting red states to totally take away all the Democratic seats and be totally red, it also encourages blue states to do exactly the same. So I can't speak for my chairwoman, but I'd take 52 seats from California. I sure would. And 17 seats from Illinois. Because at the end of the day, they're rigging this election to try to win. And we just can't sit back here and do nothing. We're going to play their game, and we're going to beat them at it.
And let's be clear, in California, for example, the 3 seats that are represented by black people, those are not majority African American seats.
That's what I was gonna say.
We have proven that we can represent a district that is not majority black.
Absolutely.
So let's not have a binary conversation about only black people can represent black seats. Because when we do represent a district, the entirety of the district rises. This is a larger issue. This is a larger issue about snatching democracy from the hands of voters across this country.
Absolutely.
And continuing to demoralize and marginalize the black vote. So this is a call to action. If you are black, if you love anything that is black, you need to be working to get everybody registered to vote, because your vote's on the line next.
We're going to fight everywhere, all the time, across the country, in the Deep South, in the North, in the West, in the Midwest. We're going to fight them everywhere, just like we've done as it relates to the gerrymandering battle that they started that we're finishing.
Yeah.
While at the same time protecting the ability of African American communities, black communities, to elect the candidate of their choice in the face of centuries of racial discrimination. And the nerve of these right-wing extremists on the Supreme Court to pretend as if racial bigotry no longer exists and then write an opinion that proves the exact opposite.
Thank you.
So at the end of the day, the Congressional Black Caucus is now at its highest level ever. 60 members strong, 56 in the House of Representatives with several vacancies. Only 11 of those members represent districts where a majority of the constituency are African Americans. 11, do the math. That means we know how to get elected in districts all across the country, y'all, and we will continue to do so. We also recognize that in the Deep South, there's a long history of intentional discrimination against black communities to try to suppress their ability to elect their candidate of choice. It's irrefutable, unmistakable, and ongoing in many instances. Now, this Supreme Court decision spoke to the Voting Rights Act, and they're trying to gut it. But we still have an intentional discrimination claim always available to us under the 14th Amendment.
That's right.
And we'll continue to use it.
Thank you. I just wanted to, for the press's purposes, that was Sidney Kamlaga Dove, Los Angeles, California, that set the record straight.
But a lot of members here represent districts
Absolutely.
that are not majority black.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And to be clear, those of us who do represent majority black districts represent that district. I grew up in that district, black, white, green, Republican, Democrat. I have my finger on the pulse, and I represent that entire district.
Ditto. Yeah, I think if we lived in what some think exists as a post-racial era, none of this would be needed. But we don't, particularly in the Deep South, as evidenced by the fact that Louisiana has never had an African-American statewide elected official since Reconstruction.
No.
Since the very seat that I hold in the United States Congress was elected by John Willis Menard, but never seated in the United States Congress 150 years ago. And 150 years later, we still have yet to have an African-American elected statewide. Listen, as Terry just said, Congressmember Sewell just said very eloquently, I represent white folk, black folk, Democrats, Republicans. I represent everyone that falls within my district. That's not always reciprocated. Hence the need for fairness, equality, and an opportunity for people to have fair elections.
Are there any further questions? Yes.
Thank you, Chair Clark. Michael Jones with Once Upon a Hill, one of the other challenges that some of you all have expressed is the media environment that we're in, given the fact that, Elon Musk controls X, Republican allies control TikTok, some of the channels that you all are trying to use to reach low propensity voters. I'm curious how you all are thinking about kind of messaging and organizing given the current media environment that we're in. How will you all go about reaching folks who, may not be, watching your live streams, reading your press releases, or maybe not always reading the publications we represent? So much of the future of you all success will be reaching voters and turning them out in ways that maybe you haven't been able to in the past. So I'm curious how you all are.
Yeah, absolutely. We have a lot of partners on the ground. The conversations have been fast and furious today. The extending of our arms into grassroots organizations on the ground in communities across this nation is inevitable. Our clergy connections are deep and run deep. This is a massively devastating decision. Everyone understands the assignment. We are all ready and willing to mobilize and be on the ground in communities across this nation. Many have already completed their primary elections. They're ready to go and gear up. We've got to get voters out. We understand the assignment. Our partners and allies understand the assignment, and we're ready to go, and we're mobilized.
Leah Breedenbrett with Gray Television. I wonder what your message is to some members on the other side of the aisle who sort of celebrate some of the civil rights leaders that you've talked about. But for example, Speaker Johnson, who often celebrates MLK today, this morning, he said this was, quote, obviously the right result. What is your message to some members who maybe don't see the connect that they should?
Yeah, well, we will continue to make it plain to them. I think they're acting like they're pretending not to know. They know exactly what this means, and they know exactly what they've been assigned to do by Donald Trump. And so we are very focused on what we must do to counteract. And anyone who wants to join us in this mission, who understand the assignment, are welcome to do so. Yes.
I'm Leah Scarin, I'm AP. Can you talk a little bit about the specifics of how this decision will impact 2026 specifically, and what this fight that you're referencing, what does that look like? Are you concerned about individual members? Is this lawsuits? What does it look like for the next several months?
I think it's an all of the above, because this decision has to be interpreted state by state. So there's not a sort of general rule. We're hearing of some states that are trying, they're in the midst of early voting right now, but are trying to bring their legislatures in to try to reconcile with what is taking place. All manner of activity will be taking place as a result of this ill-advised and horribly unwise decision made by the Supreme Court today. What it looks like door to door. It looks like the NAACP standing up, local chapters. It looks like fraternities and sororities that do voter registration on a regular basis, mobilizing. You ever see when Girl Scout cookie season opens up? That's what it looks like.
And the reality is, this wagon has gone too far down the road to be impactful in the 2026 election. We are in the 2026 election cycle now. The Supreme Court has set precedent. Just 4 years ago, in a case in Louisiana, they ruled the district to be unconstitutional, but said it's too close to the election now. Therefore, we will do it in the next cycle. At that period, it was much further away. Elections are going on now. People have had elections already in this cycle. My election, for example, in Louisiana, the early voting begins in 2 days on Saturday. So if precedent matters, then clearly this is something that will have to be taken up in the 2028 cycle, not the 2026 cycle.
Well, we're going to thank you. Thank you for coming out. Please spread the word. We're on the ground. Take care. I saw it, but I don't think it was for us. I'm not sure who it was for. You got us? Okay. I see. Yes, you do.